Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare.
It was a cool misty night, the kind you can see your breath steam. As I step out of my car, I hear the deepest, loudest sigh and see a jet of smoky steam shoot out of the dark. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Serious, night owls of Reddit, what is the creepiest thing that happened to you when everyone else was sleeping?
Number 1.
Commenter. So back when I was living way out in the countryside, I used to have to drive a good 20 minutes just to get to a county-maintained road, and then another 40 minutes into the city to go to school and work. I'd go to school in the mornings and then work with a video production company filming weddings and bar mitzvahs and such. The events tended to run well past midnight, and then we'd have to break down and transport all the gear, lock up the shop, and then it'd be an hour of driving to get back to my girlfriend's family's home way out in the ranch land. I'm driving home one night, probably 2 or 3 a.m., exhausted and probably in need of a tall glass of water if you follow, and I get to the end of the pavement and start blasting down this tiny dirt road, in that real country dark where all you can see is a little cone of headlight. Mesquite bushes and desert grass make this sort of wall on either side of the road, so it's like driving down a little chute of scraggly little branches, and I'm coming around this corner when up in the road is this up looking thing. I slam on the brakes and shoot this wall of dust out ahead of me, but through the dust sitting centered in the beam of my headlights is this white, hunched figure. It has long legs and haunches like a jackrabbit, but it's a good 4 high and kinda lumpy, like an illustration from those scary stories books, and I am terrified. It kinda rocks a little bit and shivers, and I'm looking at this thing and it makes no sense at all the way it's shaped. I stare at it for a good minute, just idling in the middle of this road trying to make up some kinda story to myself to explain what the hell I'm looking at, but I am completely stumped. So I start creeping the car forward, and as I'm getting close enough to see the shapes of its muscles and the shine of fur, the thing hops up, and the bit I thought looked like a head with a long ear stretches up and out, changing its whole shape like something out of the thing, and I about screamed. Still nearly invisible, except for its white striped legs and underbelly, this black cow that had been sitting at the edge of the road stood up, showing part of its body that had been hidden behind a folded black leg, and staggered off into the bushes to find a spot to sleep where people weren't blasting it with high beams. I felt like an idiot later, but in that moment where it was rising up and like unfolding itself, if I had run off before I saw what it really was, I'd be swearing to this day I saw a chupacabra or a demon or some craziness. Person B. In high school I worked the closing shift at a bar and grill. I came home at about 12:30 am to my parents' farm and parked under a weeping willow. It was a cool misty night, the kind you can see your breath steam. As I step out of my car, I hear the deepest, loudest sigh and see a jet of smoky steam shoot out of the dark of the willow branches. I screamed and jumped away, only to change my perspective enough to see the outline of a large black cow chomping on the willow leaves. Must have slipped out the pasture gate at the end of the driveway.
Number 2.
I drive a lot on dirt roads, during various times of the day work. My region is full of forests and rains almost every day, so during the nighttime, water plus trees / leaves plus wind plus beam lights equals strange forms. One time, nearly 3 a.m., I was heading home after more than 12 hours of work, tired as hell. It was raining and windy. I made a turn to the right, and the beam poured light in something that made me freeze. For 5 seconds, I was sure there was a effing alien standing near the road. Something about 20 meters, thin and green. Green? Then I realized it was a branch that fell from a tree, with a round fruit still hanging and other branches / leaves for arms / legs. To this day, it's still terrifying to remember what I felt in that moment.
Number 3.
Call me weird, but sometimes when I can't sleep I get bored and get out of bed. I go to the window and look out of it for a bit. I dunno, it just kinda calms me seeing my backyard in the moonlight. I find it peaceful. Anyway, I was looking out the window when I saw a figure jump the fence. Too big to be a cat, it was human-shaped. The person made the motion with their head that they were looking around frantically, then they hid behind a bush. I was petrified. For what seemed like an eternity, they stayed there. Then they ran to the other side of the backyard and jumped that fence over into my neighbor's. I never knew who it was or what they were doing. I always suspected that maybe they were being chased or something. It just really freaked me out.
Number 4.
I recall a few months ago I was on my 3DS when I heard my little 7-year-old brother calling my name. This wasn't uncommon as he used to stay up a lot on his iPod watching YouTube and had questions for so-and-so things in-game, so I put on a shirt and went to check on him. He was laying on the couch under his blanket, his phone still playing Minecraft videos when he looked at me and asked me to check his room for the knocking. I'm usually paranoid about this stuff happening anyway, so I went to look and turned on his light. As I glanced at the window, I saw a kid, not a man, a kid, maybe 11 to 12 years old, just sitting there, smiling, looking like he just had the best day ever before running off. I ran to my brother and just scooped him up and took him to my parents' room to explain what happened, but they didn't believe me. I later learned that the neighbor's kid had been sneaking out at night to play with some other neighborhood kids and wanted to play a prank.
Number 5.
So, I was at my grandmother's house in the Mississippi countryside. I didn't know it at the time, but my grandma's neighbor has pet peacocks. The thing about peacocks is that when they squawk, it sounds like a human being desperately crying for help. Imagine being me, out on my grandma's porch swing, at 2 a.m., hearing continuous human-sounding cries for help. I was terrified.
Number 6.
Commenter. I went to bed around 3 a.m. as I usually do. Laying in bed for an hour or so, I just started drifting off to sleep when I heard knock knock. Doesn't sound like something falling down, it's perfectly in rhythm for someone knocking on a door. At 4 a.m. That's bad enough, but it wasn't on the door, it was on an outside wall of my bedroom, a few feet from my head. My bedroom is on the second floor by the garage, so if it was someone knocking, and at that point I was sure it was, they were either in the attic over the garage or on the roof of the garage. I pulled out my phone and checked the garage door, it had been closed for hours. Not someone in the garage. On the roof? Doesn't seem likely. I lie awake for a couple of hours but don't hear anything else. My best guess is it was a stick that was being blown by the wind, but it really sounded like someone knocking. Person B. I heard a knock from what sounded like the outside wall of the house. I didn't move, and then a few seconds later I heard it again. I got up, looked out and saw nothing, but it continued. I was seriously convinced someone was outside knocking on the side of the house. I finally fell asleep and then the next morning realized the culprit. The fan I had on was consistently blowing a balloon into the closet door, making a very muted knocking sound.
Number 7.
Most of the problems I experience at night come down to my own damn fault. I love listening to scary story narrations, and one night I was falling asleep listening to one of my favorites at the time. I don't remember what woke me up, but all I remember was hearing someone speaking to me in the dark. I practically jumped awake and bolted for the kitchen where the knives were, only to realize that I was on hour 8 of a 10-hour horror special.
Number 8.
I can't tell you how many times people have walked into my apartment over the past 13 or so years thinking it's theirs. Most of the time I don't realize the door isn't locked, as I wasn't the last one out of the house. I'm typically on the couch playing Xbox or something, and some person just walks in and scares the living shit out of me. But one time, this guy comes in and looks really confused. He then asked me if Julian was here or something like that. I just had to tell him no, and he had the wrong apartment. Ever since then I make sure the door is locked every night.
Number 9.
When I was around 9, we lived way out in the country and my stepdad worked a swing shift. It was his week to work from 3 to 11, and my mom was the biggest chicken ever. She hated those hours from dark until he got home. So she let me stay up late on those nights to keep her company. One night, we were sitting at the kitchen table playing rummy when the doorknob started violently shaking back and forth. She was scared to death, so we turned the lights out and huddled in the living room while every so often the doorknob would rattle. We didn't have a phone to call the police, so we just sat there with her biggest kitchen knife. Dad got home shortly, and we were telling him what happened when it started again. He starts laughing, opens the door, and it's the damn cat. He wanted in, so he embedded his front claws in the wood door and was balancing on the doorknob. Except his balance was shit.
Number 10.
I have an anxiety disorder, and while it was untreated it manifested as extreme insomnia and paranoia, like not sleeping for days, and let me tell you, sleep-deprived hallucinations suuuk. Mine usually involve spiders, clowns, and combinations of the two.
Number 11.
About a month ago, I was in bed at around 3 a.m. looking at my phone in my pitch-black room when I noticed a very faint, blinking white light being emitted from my front camera. I thought my eyes were just playing tricks on me, but even when I turned my screen off I could still see it, very faint but definitely there. After that I turned my phone off and tried to go to sleep. Logically, I know it's probably nothing, but just the thought of someone watching me through the camera was enough to make me put a piece of tape over it for the following weeks.
Number 12.
I was working from home, third shift, and about 2 a.m., I heard the stuff on the coat rack in the living room rattle like it does when the door opens. I thought it might be my cat climbing on the coats, and went to get her down, and found not a cat climbing thing she knows she's not allowed on, but a person I didn't know standing in the middle of my living room. He demanded to know where his stuff was, and after insisting for about 5 minutes I had no clue who the F he was, he threatened me. My phone was in my room, and I wasn't willing to turn my back on this guy, so I reached for the katana my mother had gotten me for my birthday, sitting against the wall behind me. I got to chase a man out of my apartment, with an actual sword. Unfortunately, the whole experience freaked me out so bad that now I keep the sword next to my bed in case of noises in the night. I also locked the door.
Number 13.
I worked overnight at a gas station, well lit, considered it my home away from home, treated everyone nice except one person who assaulted me one time for declining her card. Except I can't decline it manually, so, anyway, first things first, I'm mopping the back room area as a above and beyond thing for my boss, used to even clean the ceiling vents, like I said, home away from home. And I come out to the front counter where the cigarette drawer that has all the cartons is hanging open. I immediately think I got robbed, so I lock the front doors to go in the back room to check the security footage. On the camera, the drawer opens on its own, which isn't possible since they'll shut on their own if left partially open, ensuring they only stay open if pulled all the way out. Feeling a bit creeped out but glad I wasn't robbed, I go to the front door, which is one of those twisting locks. I grab the lock to unlock it by twisting when a loud clunk occurs, and suddenly the lock is jammed shut. I called my assistant manager to inform her, and while on the phone using all my might to unlock the lock, there's 3 customers outside just laughing at this gas station clerk locked inside their store. To whatever ghost that masterminded that plan, damn good job, you got me good. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.